But because I am the practical entrepreneur, I always like to make sure that we're talking about the practicality of business and the practical way that you go about making sure that your business is on point and that you are doing what you are meant to do. All right, so let me start with this. Welcome to Let Me Say This. Let me ask you this. Who is Kamaal Martin?
Who is Kamaal Martin? I'm a father. I'm the oldest son. I'm a big brother. And it's really only been through doing a whole bunch of things that I didn't want to do that I was able to get to a place where I figured out what I should be doing. And I think it's challenging sometimes, specifically for people who have lots of interests, and I consider myself one. It can be difficult to figure out if you're in the right place or not. And oftentimes you find yourself doing things and you're not quite sure why, or you know why, because you need a paycheck, or you're trying to pay bills or take care of your family, doing the things that we all need to do. But while you're there, sometimes it's difficult to see the utility and the purpose of what that exercise or enterprise had been at that time. But now I'm in my early 40s, and I've done all types of stuff, from having been a taxi driver, a firefighter. I used to sell cars. I used to work for big brothers, big sisters, to kind of falling into politics, which opened another door and that put me on the path where I am today. And even that took a number of different forms. You know, I've run for office twice in my community, taught political science at the community college. But all of those things, while I may not have loved all of them all the time I was doing them, they were all absolutely necessary. And I would not be where I am or doing the things that I'm doing today had I not done even one less of them. So I'm very thankful for all of those things. And I also feel really fortunate just to have had the grace and the opportunity to kind of take a step back and reassess and reprioritize and then integrate those elements into the work that I'm involved in today.
Talk a bit about you as a man and a developing entrepreneur, and some of the things that you've had to do that you didn't want to do to get you to the point where you are now, and in this space where you're ready to take on entrepreneurship.
Man, where to begin? We could take it all the way back to education, at least in the post-secondary level when I was in college. I went to the University of Oregon, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do still. You know, I spent the first 2 years goofing off and actually flunked out of school and was able to lie my way back in before my parents found out about it. Hopefully they don't listen to this. But I was like, now that I'm not playing ball anymore, let me just buckle down and be a student. So I declared myself as a history major, and I'd always loved art and museums and things like that. So I did a minor in like arts and administration, thinking that I'd be a museum curator or something like that in the future. But, you know, got married relatively young, started a family young, and, you know, you got to start working and dealing with, if you're going to act grown, then you got to be grown. So I had to be grown, and wasn't no time to wait for my dream job or anything like that, pay these bills. So that's what I did. I used to live in City Heights when I first came to San Diego. And back in the day when Pearson Ford was still there, I used to drive by the place every day. So I was like, man, I need a job. Let me just pop by here. And I just popped in and started talking to people, and they hired me like literally on the spot. And I'm not a car guy per se. You know, it wasn't my thing. And I don't know if anybody thinks about selling cars as what they want to do when they grow up. But out of all of the jobs that I've ever done, perhaps more than politics even, my time in sales prepared me for what I'm doing now, as well as prepared me for the career that I had and still have to an extent in politics in ways that I could have never imagined, right? Commission sales makes you incredibly self-aware. You have to get really comfortable with the word no. You have to get really comfortable around money and not let your own financial situation mess you up where that you talk yourself out of a sale. It teaches you about people, teaches about human nature, how to build rapport quickly, how to learn products, and literally like how to sell, right? And if you could sell one thing, you could sell anything else. I don't really think there's a difference there. So the transition that I made from selling cars to even social services with big brothers, big sisters, and then into politics, I was still selling, right? Like I was selling a program, and then I was selling ideas or a candidate. And, eventually that, I became the candidate later on down the line. People have all types of different beliefs, and, I don't want to get too spooky about it. But there was obviously a plan for me. Then I was playing my part and I had no idea, right? Like I was too close to it to see the wisdom in it at the time. But now that I'm a few steps removed from it, I can see very clearly how that was placed in front of me for me to take advantage of.
Now you mentioned something. You said sales makes you self-aware.
Yes.
So many entrepreneurs, that is their stumbling block. Business owners they don't want to talk to people. They have their product, they have their service. They think, okay, I'm opening up a storefront. People are going to come in. What I have is the bomb. And so that's that. But they miss that ability or that fact that you've got to be able to sell whether you're selling yourself, or you're selling your product, or you're selling your service. People don't just buy a service. People buy from people they like. Yep. They buy the person. They buy into you. So talk about being self-aware as an entrepreneur.
So I'll dovetail on something you just said there, in that people buy from folks that they like, right? And I'll add to that, people buy or do business with folks that they like, respect, and trust. And car sales, I think, was a fantastic example because it's almost immediately antagonistic and oppositional, right? Like everybody needs a car, especially if you live in Southern California where public transportation ain't really it. But everybody knows car salesmen have this reputation for trying to rip people off and get in your pocket. So how do we navigate this rocky territory where you need something or else you wouldn't be here at my car lot? And yes, I want your money because this is a job. How do we negotiate an engagement that's respectful, that has an appropriate degree of transparency? Because we don't necessarily want to see how everything happens, right? One of the things that I decided to do is I would kind of err on the side of radical transparency. And I would tell people, like, look, this is a business and we got to keep the lights on. Like, I need to get paid too. Like, I'm not a communist. I'm not here to volunteer. And I'm not going to give this car away to you. So like, what's the most money that I can get from you today and send you home in the car that you want, that fills your needs, that does what you needed to do for your family? It's the right color. It's the right this. It's the right that. And if both of us leave feeling like, a little bit, I feel like I wish I got more, and you feel like you wish you paid less, that's where we probably get the good deal.
Okay.
I think it's a challenging thing for people to figure out who they are, but also like to not be afraid to be who you are in that space, and to give people the opportunity to resonate at your frequency, right? If you're faking it, if you're a fraud, you might get over a couple of times, but people feel it. It's instinctual. It's energetic. And if you're not comfortable with what you're doing, that's going to show as well. Similarly, if you don't believe in the product that you're selling, it's not going to work. And the other side of that is also true, where people might think, specifically for people who, are creators, inventors, founders, most humans, our favorite subject is ourselves, right? So when you come up with something, you're like, my product is the bomb. People need this. People are going to be falling all over themselves to get what I got. No, they're not. No, they're not. And your product might be the bomb, but they are not going to be tripping over themselves to come to you, because that's not how it works. I tell this story all the time because this was very revealing and it sticks with me, right? Like, out of all the hundreds of people I sold cars to, I don't remember all of them. I remember a number of them, but this couple specifically, I was an older African-American couple, pulled up in a Cadillac. It was like a late 80s lack, but it was clean. Like, you could tell they didn't drive this thing nowhere. And I was like, oh man, these people, it's going to be perfect. So they pull up. I'm very respectful, professional. How are you doing, ma'am? How are you doing, sir? Welcome to Pearson Ford. My name's Kamal. How can I help you? What are you looking for? And they were like, oh, we're doing fine, son. take us to your best white salesperson. I started cracking up. I was like, oh man, this is gonna be a good day. Like, this dude's funny, he's got jokes. And he was like, no, son, take me to your best white salesperson. Right. So what would most people do in that situation? I don't know what most people would do in that situation. All I know is what I did is I took him to our best white salesperson. And I didn't take it personal. I didn't get mad. I didn't try and argue. And I told him straight up, I was like, yeah, man, old black couple pulled up. I showed up real nice, respectful, not on some homie stuff. And they said, take me to your best white salesperson. So you the best white salesperson we got. If you sell him a car, we'll split the deal 50-50. He was like, cool. He sold him a car. We split the deal. And that was that. That also taught me a lot about like appearances and not to prejudge, right? Sometimes the people show up, bummy clothes, covered in paint, just got off the job or something. Treat that person like they're a buyer because you don't know who they are, right? And maybe they won't buy. In fact, they probably won't. But if you can establish a habit around treating everybody like a customer and giving them the respect that you would want, it will pay off in the long run, I promise you. I remember another cat, Latino brother pulled up in a busted work truck. And you always have people coming on the lot, kicking tires, just looking at stuff. It goes to the territory. But again, I treated him respectfully, treated him like he was about to buy, and he bought a new F-150 with cash. I was like, yo, like you never would have thought this dude had 50 racks in this little busted Toyota they just pulled up in, but he sure enough did. So it's things like that I think play a role in developing self-awareness and creating a standard for yourself to uphold. Right. However, you interact or engage with people, if that's kind of your baseline, if you know the beginning well, the end won't trouble you. And one more thing, just kind of that I pulled from that experience that I've carried with me as well, the word no, right? Specifically in car sales. I was able to convince myself that like, not only are the no's not personal, the no's are actually absolutely essential. And the strategy or tactic that I kind of tricked myself into thinking is every time I hit the lot for a shift, I need to try and get 25 no's as quickly as possible. Because on the other side of that 25th no, that 26th no, that was the yes. So like, if you knew that you had to get 25 no's from someone before you got $1 million, you wouldn't hesitate to go out there and talk to people, to risk sounding foolish, to risk all other types of variables that could happen in that scenario, knowing full well that I have to get through these to get to the one that I want. And if I'm not asking, because it's a numbers game, right? Like you need more shots on goal. You need to talk to people. And understanding that I didn't have the luxury to wait because I didn't have clientele initially. I didn't have people to refer me to them or them to me. I had to like jack people and like stimulate interest however I could. So not only that, like I would get on a phone book and straight up like cold call people on the phone book. And I can't say that there was a high success rate, right? But if you're already standing out in the corner or, it's 30 guys out on the corner, like, well, let me take an hour, let me take 2 hours and dial for dollars and see what happens. Or let me go through the databases of salesmen who aren't here anymore, since we were allowed to do that if someone wasn't at the lot, and call their customers since they already bought something from here. Like, hey, Miss So-and-so, I heard you bought something from Joe back in, 2003. How's that Ford Ranger treating you still? Well, matter of fact, Ford Ranger just crashed. Like, oh man, terrible to hear that. I hope everybody's okay. Why don't you come on down? You need to pick you up. Like, you got to be hungry. You got to be creative. Right. And get them no's however you can. So you can get the yes. Pay them bills.
And I just had an experience with that. I just participated in my first pitch competition because I developed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I wrote an entrepreneurship curriculum. I have taught it some, and I went in this pitch competition for the curriculum because I want to take it nationwide now. But I didn't win the competition, but I got some feedback. And I wasn't disappointed at all. I mean, sure, I would have liked to have won, but I looked at it and some of the feedback, it was very rote. So I knew it was just the standard, whatever. But then there was one little sentence in there and I held on to that. And I was like, okay, so this tells me right here that I need to double, if not triple, the number of contracts or the number of clients that I have that I'm teaching this curriculum to, because then every other question I had already answered in the pitch, and maybe it went over their heads or they just forgot, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was the one piece, and I said, okay, so I will never get a no again because of this. This will never be the reason that someone turns me.
I like that, and won't trouble you.
Very well said. I think it's also about allowing the space to know what you know and to accept what you don't know. And like you said, you turn to the older, more experienced salespersons to get more, to get some information from them, to learn some tricks of the trade, establish rapport. So you were able to go to the best white salesperson and say, hey, we're going to split this 50-50. And he was okay with that. Yeah. And not taking it personally. I think that was also another really important one, because oftentimes people will take it personal. If you taste something or ask to sample, I'm notorious. I will say, can I try that? Because I know I'm funny about my food. I want it to be good.
That's not funny at all.
No,
like
so right. So if I try it and I don't like it, and I say, oh no, thank you. Many a time I've had people get offended that I didn't like it. I'm like, it's nothing personal. I just know what I like, and I'm not going to like this. So I'll try something else, but yes, to your point, know yourself, be willing to hustle, be willing to learn, and don't take it personal. Okay. So when I'm listening to you, I am hearing all of your experiences that you've had throughout your life.
Absolutely.
Coming to and intersecting at this very point.
Absolutely.
That is giving you what you need to move forward with art, power, and equity. So I was going to ask you, hey, how'd you come up with the name? But I think looking at 1, 2, 3 of the pillars, then it's very clear how you came up with that. But now the acronym is APE. And so I have to say that when I saw that, at first, I didn't know how I felt about that. And the reason being, and I would be honest, and the reason being is that I'm very sensitive when you have white audiences who look at an organization that is started for and that advocates for people who are disenfranchised, marginalized, or people of color. And then when you see APE, and I think, okay, does that plant a seed in the minds of some? Did you think about that? I'm always interested in names, and that's why that was the first thing that stuck out to me, because again, in coaching entrepreneurs, teaching entrepreneurship, names is something I spend a lot of time on. You don't want to just call yourself Brown Brothers unless there's a reason to be called Brown Brothers. Differentiate yourself, make sure that you're distinctive, but also be careful of the acronyms. So talk a little bit about that. And if you thought that, and if you've gotten any, if that's the first time you've even heard that comment, and if not, then what's your response?
So no, it is not the first time I've heard that comment. One of the comments that I've heard from someone else who was also Black, they were like, if it was anybody but you, I would have been mad at it. But because it's you, I'm okay. I've also had a couple of white people who were like, so Kamal, like, is that a thing? Is it okay? Like, is it okay because you're doing it? And I was, honestly, it is something I thought about beforehand. It's not like I was like, yo, APE has to be the acronym because X, Y, and Z. Like, it was art, power, and equity. And I thought about art and equity and power, or equity and, switch it up. But I was like, you know what? It's also bearing witness to the place that I'm in my life, where I could really care less what other people think right now. And this is more about doing the work that I believe needs to be done. And I think there's an energy connected to it as well that resonates with me. is powerful. It's strong. And it's also about like we coming through and we throwing elbows and we not apologize. It's about not asking for permission, right? We may ask for forgiveness depending on, how far we take it. But I'm at a point in my life where I'd much rather go too far than not go far enough.
All right. I'm satisfied. Not that you had to satisfy me, but I was just, I felt I had to ask a question,
Yeah, no, it's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question.
Yeah. Who is your target audience for APE?
I suppose it depends on which part of the practice we're referring to. One of the things that I've tried to do on the financial services side is dig back into my Lemon Grove network, because I already got thousands of people on an email list and a call list, and I've already built credibility and trust with them. So part of what I tried to do is to present the opportunity for them to participate in a circular economy, right? Like, what type of financial services do you need? Well, you could get them from anybody, but why don't you get them from me? Because one, you already know me, like me, and trust me for the most part. And beyond that, I'm committed to this community. And if you get these things that you already need anyway from me, I'll commit to putting X amount of these proceeds back into like Lemon Grove specific organizations that have nothing to do with me to help lift up the good work that other people are doing. And the more that we can support one another, the more that we can create some mutual benefit and, like a little healthy circular economic ecosystem here.
Yeah.
So that's become one angle there. With other pieces, there are different target audiences depending on the body of work itself. With a lot of the work that I'm doing in the advocacy space now around funding disparities, it's City of San Diego specific. So a lot of my work is in Council District 4, 8, and 9 right now. A lot of my focus area for the community development component of the work is, what I would call the greater Southeastern San Diego. So Lemon Grove, all the way through, Encanto and Paradise Hills, but, through Logan and National City, everything from the 94 to the 54 and the 125 to the 15, because those are the communities that I believe need the greatest type of investment, and not this one-time gestural piece, but repetitive, consistent relationship building engagement, investment, not a gift, not charity, not crumbs off a table, something that builds power and equity at the same time. And, the other side, as far as target audience for the artists whose work I show and work I help sell, well, that's international, right? Because everybody got money and you could be anywhere and buy a painting or a sculpture. But I do try and focus on, artists who haven't got the type of notoriety that I feel like they maybe deserve from larger, predominantly white-led cultural institutions throughout the region. But my audience is also those institutions, because they got to break bread too. Some will come hold them upside down and shake them till their pockets empty out and spread it with my peoples.
All right. So let me ask you this question. You started it, Art, Power, and Equity, or APE, after your mayoral campaign didn't go the way that you wanted. All right. You also mentioned you did also run for a congressional seat. But how did you pick yourself up? And then how did you make such a huge pivot?
I think my bounce back game has always been strong, right? I think resilience is impossible, or is very important. I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in like more shots on goal. And, if you ain't down, or if you've never been down, it means you're not pushing yourself hard enough, and you're not testing your limits. And I think I tested a lot of my limits when I ran for city council in Lemon Grove and then for mayor. And I definitely envision myself running for office again in the future. It may or may not be in Lemon Grove, and I'm in no hurry to do any of those things. But I still imagine that being part of my life down the line. When I didn't get elected this past November, I knew I just had to like sit and take some time to reflect and to process. Running for office is challenging enough. Then you add the pandemic on top of it, right? Like, I'm over here knocking on doors, asking people for money, and people are unemployed. People are dying. But like, I'm still trying to walk this tightrope of like, I need to get out here and talk to people, because the houses is where the voters are. You can't social media way you're winning to win an election. With all of those things, I felt like part of the bounce back was like an honest accounting and reckoning of all the things that I had been doing, but also like, what's the next move, right? And like, also understanding a big part of any campaign, whether you're successful in terms of winning the election or not. Like, I would say my campaign was an absolute success, right? And then I didn't win the election, or what I often say is I didn't get elected, but I didn't lose that election, right? Like all of the new skills that I acquired, all of the new pieces of information and facts that I learned, all of the new relationships that I built. And it's really, really powerful. In fact, I encourage everybody to run for some kind of office at some point in their lives, no matter what it is, like school board, you know, PTA, scout troop, parent, whatever it is, run for something, because it's a great exercise, not just in self-awareness, again, like telling you, well, who am I and what do I stand for, but also like digging into your network and asking people for help. It's a hard thing for people, especially competent people, to ask other people for help. I think a lot of society wants to tell us that people who ask for help are weak, but that's absolutely false. It's only strong people who are able to ask for help. And it's a weakness to think you could do it on your own, because you can't. So not only are you asking people for money that's not tax deductible, right? You're asking people to volunteer. You're asking people to show up and do this. You're asking people to show up and do that. So you have to get really comfortable with like being vulnerable and kind of stepping outside of yourself in this kind of surreal type of experience where you're kind of watching yourself do these things, and it's a version of yourself that you're trying to put forward, but you're also opening yourself up again to like all types of slander and attacks. But similarly, you open yourself up to like some really beautiful expressions of humanity and community, where you find out who your friends really are, you find out who's rocking with you, you find out who's not rocking with you, and then like new people show up that you didn't know from Adam, who are like, hey, I heard about you, how can I help? I heard about you, here's a check. That stuff is super powerful, super powerful. And it was like those pieces that I think helped like cultivate and nourish the environment that I needed to have to be able to like hit the ground and then like dust myself off, not feel ashamed, not feel embarrassed, because I ran my campaign with integrity. I ran it hard. I didn't get elected because it wasn't my time, but also because there was something that was closer to what I was supposed to be doing that I didn't see yet, that I had to not win that election to be put in a position where I'd be open to receiving that vision, right? But then perhaps the most powerful part was right after the election is done, people are really excited in the community, especially, you know, people who supported you and who have been with you, who are like, so what do we do now, Kamal? What's next?
Yeah.
Where do we go now? Like, direct us. And it's like, hey, you know what? Like, how about we pause for a second so I can figure out like what the move is? But more importantly, I need to figure out what the move is for myself. And just because y'all love me and are down with me doesn't mean that I have to move the way and the direction that you want me to move. So it was only by kind of giving myself time to reflect, and also time to say no, right? Like the power of no. That's been a hard thing for me professionally for a long time, especially around activities and projects that are good and beneficial. You know, you want to be able to say yes and help people. And I think that's part of my character. At the same time, I've learned more and more that I can't spread myself too thin, and that I have to guard my energy and my time for the things that I believe and feel are relevant. So I had to interrogate all those things. Like, all right, so I ain't the mayor of Lemon Grove. What am I? What do I want to do? What am I good at? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? And it was during the campaign, a young woman who is the director of the pop-up gallery in Market Creek Plaza, where we did our first exhibition. She's a first-time gallery director. And I remember talking to her before the campaign was over, maybe back in like August, September, when she first got the space. And it's funny, sometimes, you know, we want things, and then when we get them, we're like, oh, snap, now I got that thing. Now,
No.
what do I do with it, right?
Right.
And she was kind of in that position, like, oh, like now I got to like fill this space with activity and programming and artists.
Mhm.
And I was like, would you be interested in a guest curator? And she was like, oh, definitely. Like, you know somebody? I was like, yeah, me. And she was like, you? What? Like, what you know about art? And I was like, I know a little bit, but she needed somebody.
Mhm.
So I was able to get a commitment from her. And I was like, whatever the last month is, because, I still was thinking I was going to win that election.
Mhm.
I was like, whatever the last month is, give me the last month so I don't have to think about it too quickly. And I have some time to reflect. And we'll just kind of go from there. And just having that piece kind of put in motion set the other pieces in motion, and things just began to align. And to your point earlier about, how's my logo look, and how does my website look, and what does the font look like, and my proposal is like this, and your proposal ain't never going to be perfect. Your website ain't never going to be right. Like none of that stuff is ever going to be ideal. So just do the thing, whatever that thing is. Start where you are with whatever you got, and the whole kind of minimum viable product idea.
Yes.
I really took that to heart, right? And also recognizing I've done enough things for other people. Let me do something for myself.
Absolutely.
Let me do something for myself that also benefits other people, right? Like it's not completely self-serving, but it came from, a really deep personal place, but took all these things that I had done and repositioned them in a way that was far greater than anything I could have ever imagined myself. So that's the Reader's Digest version of that. The moral of the story is, if you got an idea, go do that thing, right? Like, and by doing the thing, you will learn the things that you need to know. If you wait till all the lights is green before you leave the house, you ain't finna get nowhere. So just go and make it happen. And again, like I lost 2 elections. I've been fired from jobs before. I'm used to hearing no. Like, so what if you don't like the pictures I hung up? I ain't killing cancer. I ain't building bridges. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that serious.
I have become more in tune with I've always been very creative and artistic, but I have started a line of holistic healing candles.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I have. So I'm very excited about that. And I actually design different aprons for artists as well as for gardeners and
I like it.
anything like that. Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah. So that was a part of, so let's go into this question. We're in the pandemic. You actually launched this during a pandemic. You were in a campaign during a pandemic. I launched my candles and my aprons during a pandemic. You mentioned before that you had to take a pause after you lost the last election. And I look at this pandemic as a blessing because it was a pause and it gave us all an opportunity to just take a minute and take a breath if we chose to do so.
Yeah.
And to reevaluate and reanalyze what we're going to do with the rest of our lives and what we want the rest of our lives to look like. So what was it like getting this up and going during a pandemic? And then how do you see things shifting or changing now that you're in Southern California and I know California is opening up things a bit faster than we are here in the DMV area, but how are things shifting for you and changing?
So first of all, it was the recognition of my own power and privilege to be able to take a pause, right? Because not everybody got a pause. Like some people did. Some people had to keep working because they were essential workers in a grocery store or, in the hospital. And I think it was, having that perspective and that lens to understand like my own role in the larger scope of things, and that, what am I doing to impact people and create some benefit for folks who don't even know me and will never know me, right? Like that's something that's very important to me, and part of what generated my initial interest in public service in the first place. I had already run the campaign, so like starting a business ain't going to be no harder than everything I just did. So it was really just kind of looking at all those, like the architecture put in place by the things that I had just done and the pandemic itself, I kind of felt like the whole year I was riding like this giant wave, right? And you're terrified on one level because it's massive and it's loud and it's violent, and one false move and, you know, it could really be bad. Like, it could be over. So the only way through is through. Like, you have to commit. You just got to be present and like not think about what could go wrong, not think about what could go how it could go horribly. Just focus on being in this space and feeling that energy and like experiencing the ride while you're on it, because this moment is never going to come again. And maybe you ride it all the way into shore and the people cheer you, or maybe you get smashed by this wave and no one ever sees you again. But either way, the only way to survive is to stay present and commit. And I feel like that's what I did.
The name of the show is Let Me Say This. I end my show the exact same way. I ask my guests to frame it like this: let me say this, and leave us with your parting words, thoughts, or any form of advice that you want to give.
Let me say this: start today. Start wherever you are with whatever you have.
That's it.
That's it.
Drop the mic.
Start today with whatever you got.
And whatever you have, whatever you got to give, just do it.
Make it happen.
All right. So people are going to want to get in touch with you. How do they do that?
Email Kamal at artpowerequity.com, kamal.martin@gmail.com. We have Art Power Equity on Instagram, Facebook as well. You give me a phone call, 619-373-2039.
Look at you giving out your phone number.
Yeah. So I did that during the campaign too. People were like, well, you giving out your personal phone number? Like, ain't nobody really finna call. And the few who did, right? The few who did were very excited to actually hear from me. And it was funny because they'd be like, yeah, can I talk to I'd like to talk to Kamal Martin, please. Or like someone else. I was like, yo, this is Kamal, what's happening? They're like, wait, like this is Kamal? Like, yeah, this is Kamal. What's good? Let's talk. You live in Lemon Grove? Can you vote for me? Oh, I don't live in Lemon Grove. Oh, you can still write me a check though.
There's that
I believe in being productive and accessible, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kamal. I appreciate it tremendously. It's been
my pleasure. Thank you so much for thinking of me, for reaching out. It was great catching up.